Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are at our Linwood branch and I want to show you guys a little bit about how the orchids are mounted differently in the nursery. So as they are epiphytes, so they can actually be mounted onto wood. And we recently had a workshop in our Randburg branch showing people how to actually mount the orchids onto the wood. So I would like to show you how they actually look in our nursery. These are what we call Mapani wood. They are essentially driftwood, and because of the hardness, they actually take quite a long time to decompose. And as such, it's actually a great candidate for us to use as a mounting material for our orchids. So you can kind of see, as you would have orchids in the wild, they would typically be clinging onto a branch or a crevice of a rock. So just to give you an idea, these Laelia anceps are on top of driftwood, and some of them are on sleeper wood. And you know, we rush in to repot them, but if you look at this specimen over here in our nursery, it hasn't been repotted at all for over 5 to 6 years. So as time goes by, they actually multiply, and it actually gives you a great representation of what they would actually look like in the wild when nobody goes in and then physically repot them. So it's actually quite amazing. As they multiply, they become quite a big bunch as such, and gives you quite a presentation. So you'll kind of see as you walk through the nursery, this is how they look like when they are in their growth phase. So what we typically do is break off at least 2 to 3 bulbs, mature bulbs, and then we tie them either with lady stockings.
Wow.
Or something that can withstand the UV rays, and making sure that they are secure. And as time goes by, you'll kind of see the root system of the orchid itself is going to bind into the wood and grab onto it as much as possible. And these are the air roots, where they have grown to actually be able to absorb nutrients out of the air. So if you have orchids that are mounted onto wood like this, what you would like to make sure is water them thoroughly. So giving them, we give these orchids a good watering on a daily basis, since they are exposed to the air, and in our environment the moisture is actually quite low. So making sure that they are watered will ensure their continuous growth, and as time goes by, they're going to grow into big specimens like these. So as long as you have a firm piece of wood as the basis for mounting, you want to choose something that is not going to rot or decompose as you water the orchid. As time goes by, the wood will eventually rot, but the more chance that you give the orchid, the better. So for example, if this was a rock, it will take a very long time before it actually disintegrates. So for wood like this, it will typically last you from anywhere from 7 to 8 years, and by that time the orchid would be very well established. So here we have dendrobiums that are planted into sphagnum moss. So with the use of sphagnum moss, you kind of have a better retention of water, and we are in the beginning of June. So you'll find as the temperature drops, they naturally flower. So this is the usual time for them to come into bloom. And dendrobiums are a great candidate for mounting as well. As you'll see, sometimes like a plant like this, you'll find a little pup that grows from the top of the stem, and as time goes by, they will start to develop air roots. And as long as you have at least 10 to 15 centimeters of air roots, you want to get enough roots so that if you break it off, you're able to repot them, and the success rate is just so much better. So the difference between a plant and a bloom, you can kind of see the bloom has a much rounder visual effect if you look closer. So this is what they typically look like in the beginning phases of their flowering season. Right, the difference between this and a plant, you can kind of see here underneath the leaf of the orchids. And all these air roots is helping this little baby dendrobium gain as much traction in its growth phase. So as time goes by, you want to at least have 10 to 15 centimeters of air root before you break it off. And once you break it off, what you would like to do is you want to wrap them in some sphagnum moss, and you can put it into a smaller pot. Alternatively, you can also do as what we've done towards the back and mount them onto wood. So very similar to this orchid over here, we'll wrap them onto the wood. And the best time to actually repot them is when the season starts to turn a little bit warmer. So in South Africa, right now, June is when we enter into winter. So typically towards the end of August, beginning of September, that would be the best time to give your orchid a better chance of continuous growth through spring, through summer, as well as autumn. And as time goes by, all those roots that you see is going to grab onto the wood itself. So here in the greenhouse, we typically have a temperature that is no less than 5 degrees. So at the moment, we're still in the beginning of June. Being a little bit warmer in the nursery, you can still kind of see the roots will continue to grow. So make sure that you water these on a daily basis. So typically our staff would come in and then give these a good watering in the morning, and then a light spray towards 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and that's about it. Don't water your orchids late in the afternoon when you're going into winter. What's going to happen is they're going to sleep with wet feet, and that is going to be one of the reasons that will set the orchid back and then go into hibernation. So you want to refrain from watering too late in the winters to make sure that you have a healthy orchid going forward. So this is what you would like to see, a long section of continuous growth of the roots, and that will give you an indication of a healthy orchid. And often you'll find that from the stem you actually get pups that grows up from here. So if you do have plants that are at this stage, what you would like to do is you want to wait until the roots is typically about 10 to 15 centimeters longer, and that would just give the plants, the little baby pups, a better chance of survival when you repot them into a different container. So you can plant them into bark, you can plant them into peat moss or sphagnum moss. As long as they receive a consistent watering and feeding, they'll be able to grow very healthy. Looking at the dendrobiums, you can kind of see the planting medium is very different to the sphagnum moss. So these ones are coir fiber. They are much well draining. As you water them, the water is going to dry off much quicker. So typically about 2 to 3 days, the water is going to dry. So the other planting medium that you can also use are your bark nuggets. So make sure, if I can kind of bring this closer, you can kind of see the barks are actually bone dry. So making sure that when you do your repotting, if you are using your bark nuggets, so typically you use these for your cymbidium. If you use the bark nuggets, make sure you hydrate them. So to hydrate them, you basically open up the packet and then soak them in water. As you soak them in water, that bark is going to take in their water, and because these ones has been in the packet for quite a long time, it's going to hydrate those bark nuggets. Once they are hydrated, typically you'll soak them for a day and then take them out. The water would be totally yellow and it's fine. You'll chuck the water away, and then that planting medium will be ready to repot. So a hydrated look, if I can show you, these are bromeliads. Bark nuggets are also one of their main options for planting medium. So you can kind of see a hydrated bark looks a little bit darker. And that is just going to help you when you repot your orchid. When you water them, they're not going to be dry. So consistency is key. So if I take you through over here, so this is our season for our cymbidiums, and I just want to show you the difference in terms of planting medium. So these are what we call rock wool. So they're quite popular in the industrial industry, in the home industry, and what they do is they also act as a sphagnum moss, like a sponge, to hold as much water as possible. So cymbidiums are winter orchids, and if I look down at the base of the orchid, a lot of our clients through the workshop and coming through to the nursery kind of ask us, when is it time for me to repot my cymbidium? So cymbidium typically multiplies either 1 to 2 bulbs a year, and the time that you want to repot them is after they flower. And you don't necessarily have to repot them per se, as long as they still have space. So you can kind of see, as this cymbidium grow, you still have about 2 to 3 years worth of growth in this pot. But some of you have cymbidiums in the family for many years, and with those ones where you have multiple spikes, you want to repot them into a bigger container. Thanks everyone for watching. So I hope everyone have a better idea of the different type of orchid that we have in the nursery, and the different ways that they are planted in the nursery as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you like these videos, please give us a like and subscribe to our channel so you can see more of them. I'll see you in our next video. Take care. Bye bye.